So welcome to the second of my classes. Let's start with a brief invocation. Om Sadasiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. Good. Now, yesterday I talked about the means of learning. Do you remember? Because, we did the first bit, Shravanam. Shravanam is you hear something so that you are almost able to paraphrase it back. And since I can't remember anything I said yesterday, I'm going to rely on you to figure out what I talked about. Remember? Shravanam, Mananam, Nitityasanam. Do people remember those techniques? The first one is Shravanam. When I hear something, I want to hear it without opinion. Does that ring any bells? I talked about opinion. Opinions are not true, all right? They're true for you, but they're not general truth. So we talked about opinion, and then we said that you need to be very careful. You need the power of discrimination to be able to figure out from what you hear, what you do, how you think, what helps you along your spiritual path, and what does not. You must be able to discriminate between the two. And this power of discrimination is not age discrimination or sex discrimination or anything else. This is discriminating between what needs to be done for you to progress down the path that you have. You need to do that. And then you need to come to the conclusion that whatever I do, I must not be attached to the result. Do you remember the story? What was the story I gave about detachment from the results? There's always 4 outcomes. Remember, what are the 4 outcomes? Number 1, as expected. Number 2, better than expected. Number 3, worse than expected. Number 4, unpredictable, contrary to all expectations. And we don't control all of those because they have so many variables. We don't control all of those. And suddenly, this is the first point at which the ego takes a great knock. Because until then, it was, I did it. All right? I'm sorry, but the I component of what you do is tiny compared to the world, the universe component of what may be coming in against you. So it's a very tiny part. That's when the ego starts to take a slight knock, and it goes to the back and it tries to fight again to say, I'm gonna really come back strong next time round, right? There'll be some counter argument. Remember that this class, I, tongue-in-cheek, said fast track to liberation. We've already had an hour and a half. I mean, I've been in fast track lines that are much quicker than this. So we're about to start the next hour and a half. So, and I said that one of the things, remember that if we're going to get to a state of permanent happiness, then a state of permanent happiness doesn't have any unhappiness in it. Anything that's permanent and complete has to be infinite. And if something is infinite, then we must already be in it. So the big question to ask is, why aren't I permanently happy? All right? And you aren't permanently happy because you're ignorant of where you are. And the only way to eradicate ignorance is through knowledge. Is this coming back to those who stayed in the class yesterday? Good. It's coming back to me too. This is pretty good. All right. So I said that to eradicate ignorance, we need knowledge. What do we need knowledge about? All right. There's only 2 things in the world. There's me, and then there's the not me. Right? That includes everything in the whole universe. There's me, Atma, the not me, Anatma. Right? Everybody got that? Very complicated words. There's the me, Atma. Everything but me, everything but the self is Anatma. Okay? There is nothing else in the world. All I have to do is figure out these 2, and I'm done. All right? Then I understand the whole universe. I understand everything about myself and everything about everything else. All my questions. Remember what was the first question we went through yesterday? How did this effect get here? I'm the effect. What was the cause of this effect? And what's the conclusion we came to? Is God the cause of this effect? No, right? It's not even chance. The cause of this effect is me, my past actions, and the consequences of my past actions were accumulated. And those consequences now get withdrawn from remember I called it a consequence bank? We make an ATM withdrawal, we call it prarabdha karma, with which we're born. And prarabdha karma at the time of birth is like an arrow that leaves the bow. And the arrow flies, and your prarabdha karma executes as the arrow flies. When the arrow runs out of steam, this body and mind goes. You die. Bad news, but you die, all right? And you die, why? Because you've exhausted, in this experiential body, you've exhausted all the prarabdha karma with which you were born, right? But don't think for one moment that life is fatalistic. It isn't. At every stage, you can affect what happens. You can't affect the main things, right? You can't affect who you're going to marry. There you go. But that's one of the things of life. But that's one of the main things. But the main things are done. But within that, you can modify it through your own actions. Every action you perform creates its own consequence. That consequence can either be immediate, executed there and then, or if you snuff it before that execution is done, then you save it for next time. Right? So be good. Otherwise, next time it'll be tougher. All right? That's the consequential effect of every action. Right? Is this coming back? Slowly. All right? Okay, so that's how we got here. Now, why are we here? And that we also explained a little bit, didn't we? We said, what is the primary reason for being a human being? Human being is the pinnacle of the system. Why? What's the primary reason to be a human being? Is to understand who you are. And when you understand who you are, you realize that you're not the mind and body through which you're trying to understand who you are. Isn't it sad? The pinnacle of being a human being with a mind and body capable of rational thought is to figure out that I'm not the mind and body that's currently thinking. No other animal is able to do this. That's why we have to do it in this life, and to waste this life is really a disgrace. Right? You're able to think in this way. And the very fact that you're in this tent, you're at this festival at all, is that you want to know. You're a seeker. Right? What does a seeker think? Seeker has gone past that stage of I control everything. I want some of these answers. And these answers were all written down. Right? And they were all written down in the Vedas, which become the source of the answers to these life's questions. And the Vedas says, remember I called it the operating manual for the human being? Operating manuals are never written by the apparatus that they talk about. Your Hoover does not write the operating manual for your Hoover. All right? We're human beings, so the operating manual was not written by human beings. That's interesting. Right? If it is a source of knowledge of what to do, then we have to, first of all, in order to make a general statement, source of knowledge, we have to come to the conclusion, how do we come to know? Right? The Veda says, this is the source of knowledge by which you come to know, and then it defines, how do we come to know? Very easy question. How do we come to know anything? All right? Actually, what we do is we have these five senses. Everybody knows them? Ears, eyes, most of the holes in the face, right? And the skin is the final one, the touch. These are the five organs: sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch, through which we experience the world. Okay? Oh, this is really easy. I thought this would be a difficult class. All right? So all of these senses then pick up and they take it to the mind. And they play it to the mind, and we observe it. It's like it's being played out on a screen, and we're observing the screen, and it's a touchy-feely, smelly, it's a really very complicated high-tech screen, and we observe the world, right? We never observe the world directly. What we see, taste, or smell, we are actually doing in our mind, right? Just as a cinema screen is an illusion of the real thing, what is being projected in our mind is an illusion of the world. I say illusion because it's limited by the 5 sense organs we have. I can't pick up Radio 4, all right? But Radio 4 is out there. I can't see it, and therefore I'd say there is no Radio 4, all right? I could say that, but I can't. I can't do infrared. I can't do ultraviolet. I can't hear like a bat. So I'm limited to the sense organs. It's an illusion, what I see in my mind. Okay? The delusion is thinking that what I see in my mind and what is outside are one and the same thing. It's a delusion to believe an illusion. Okay? Oh dear, this is getting tougher. We haven't got past the first half hour yet. Okay, so the Vedas say, if it's an operating manual for life, how should we operate ourselves as human beings? And there's billions of us, so there must be all types of agendas that we have. And the Vedas split it down very clearly into 4 things. You only have to do, there's only 4 goals in life. The pursuits of human beings can be classified as 4 things. I'll ignore number 1. All right. Number 2 is artha. Artha means wealth, acquisition of wealth. You're meant to acquire wealth. Don't think that if you're a spiritual person, you just have to have knotted hair and go, right? That's not true. You need wealth to be able to feed yourself, to be clothe yourself, to shelter yourself, and look after your dependents. It is your absolute duty to acquire wealth, sufficient to perform those tasks. Not to acquire them in abundance, but do what is necessary in order to support your other goals. Right? The third one is karma. Karma means, anybody? Yes, no. That's karma, right? Karma is desires, in this case it's enjoyment. You are meant to enjoy yourself in this experiential world, right? It is your right. It is your duty to maximize this life for the enjoyment of yourself and others. The Vedas say so, all right? The third one, that was the third one. The first one was actually dharma. And dharma has many translations, but dharma actually means, in this case, an ethical lifestyle, an ethical mindset. So when you acquire wealth, when you enjoy, dharma now becomes an adjective. You acquire wealth in an ethical manner. All right? You enjoy yourself in an ethical manner. What does that mean? It means with least harm to others. You're able to earn whatever you want to earn, all right? But don't hurt other people doing so, or other things, the environment to do so. So dharma, artha, kama are the first 3. And they're to be performed by your actions in this life as a result of the faculties with which you were born, for which the architect is you. Right? Don't put any responsibility to anyone else. Right? Why do I need to wear glasses? Well, that's your prarabdha karma. You were born with those eyes. Okay? So, first 3 done by your action. The 4th and final goal in life, moksha, liberation. Hey, that's what we're doing the FastTrack for. Exactly, liberation. Right? That's the 4th and final goal of life. Everything is geared towards liberation. Liberation means what? Freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom from the ups and downs of life. Right? The sadness, the happiness, the duality that comes in life. Our life is always like this. deliriously happy, hopelessly sad. All right? It goes up and down, up and down. Some people very up and down, and some people are more like this. Okay? But it's the same for everyone. That's samsara. Right? Freedom from samsara is moksha. Most religions, in fact, all religions, promise you moksha after death. Okay? Do this now, and you'll sit beside God, right? And it'll be brilliant. The light will be brilliant, and you'll have really the type of music that you like, and the food you're going to eat is going to be fantastic, right? And the body you've always wanted, all of those things. Vedanta isn't like that. Vedanta says moksha can be achieved here and now, while living, right? You can be a jivan mukta. You can be somebody who's achieved this freedom while alive. All you have to do is come to know who you are. Right? That's all you have to do, come to know who you are. Okay, Ram, how do I come to know who I am? Well, first of all, before you come to know who you are, you have to understand how you come to know. Right? The process of knowing, the first thing, all right? You have to know how you know before you know who you are. And we've already said perception through the five senses. Everybody understands perception. What's the second means of knowing? My students. See, absolutely blank. Inference. The second means of knowing is inference. The example always given, I'm walking by the lake, and on the other side I see smoke rising in the trees. I cannot see the fire, but I can infer from the smoke that there is a fire there. I have knowledge of the fire without being able to perceive the fire. Inference is the second means of knowing. Okay? Very important to know how you know. And the Vedas tell you, the Vedas just aren't the source of knowledge, they also tell you how to know the source of knowledge. Right? The third one, they always forget this one. Third one, presumption. You see, they have forgotten, but the Shravana is still working its way through. All right? They get to the Manana bit, and I think, oh, I've forgotten the Shravana bit, and they have to then go back to the Shravana bit. Okay, the third one is presumption. You get up in the morning, you open the curtains, the pavement is wet. You can't see any rain, but you presume it must have rained during the night. Right? Presumption is inference displaced by time. Oh, that's complicated. All right? So that's by which you come to know. You've come to know something. You haven't perceived it. You presume that it must have been raining. Or you're walking along the road and suddenly you hear a horn behind you. You can presume that it's a motor car. All right? So, presumption. The fourth one. Negation or similarity. Let's do similarity first. All right? You come to know something by it being similar to something else. I've never seen a zebra, but somebody says zebra is like a striped horse. I know what a horse is, therefore I now have knowledge of what a zebra is. Okay? So similarity is a way of coming to know. Third one is the absence of something. The absence of something allows you to come to know. All right? I say, do you see the elephant on my hand? You say, no, I don't see any elephant on my hand. And I say, what color is the elephant that you don't see? All right? The absence of something. You walk into a room and there's no one there. The fact that there's no one there, the absence of people, you can say it's an empty room. You come to know something through the absence of something. Right? And then the final one is words. We rely a lot on words. And words themselves allow you to come to know. And words can be split into two sets. Authored words. Right? You read in a newspaper, you read on a website. You hear on the radio the words coming out, and that's perception of the words, but the words have been recorded by somebody who's perceived something and then recorded it for you to play it back later. You come to be wise as a result of words. There's another set of words that are not authored. They're revealed. Right? When words come from a position of not being authored by other human beings, they're called revealed. And we have to have that category because everything from perception to authored words is based on perception. Okay? I see you lot, I see the smoke, I see the rain, all right? I don't see the elephant. It's everything, I see the words, everything is based on perception. So basically, we have perceptions that come through human knowledge, all right? And then we have revealed words. The Vedas are revealed words. You need to understand the others in order to understand what the Vedas are. The Vedas are said to be revealed, which means that the rishis in great meditation, when they sat there thousands of years ago, these ideas were revealed to them. Then they put it down as words, as speech, and then they passed it on through a series of generations. You don't need to believe that. I'll say it again. You don't need to believe that. You need to have the Shraddha that says, I'll accept that, subject to future verification. Remember? We talked about this. I'll accept this because Ram says so. All right? And I hear that his tradition is quite a long one, goes back a bit. They probably know a thing or two. All right? So I'll accept it for the time being. I'll accept it fully, subject to future verification. Okay. So now we know how we come to know. Now we know, all right, what are we going to know about? There's only two things to know about, right? What do I call this bit? Atma and the Anatma. Only two things, all right? And where do so if there's two things, I have to find a gap. I have to know where Atma stops and Anatma begins, right? Very easy. So where does Atma stop? Let's see. Ring on my finger. Atma or Anatma? Anatma is not me. All right? The finger. Atma or Anatma? Atma. So, nice gap, nice inter-Atma, Anatma separation point would be my skin. That could be where I finish and the rest of the world starts. All right? That's a good assumption. Great. So everything this side of the skin is me. Everything the other side of the skin is Anatma. Right? That must work for all of us, right? Every bit of inside your skin must be Atma, and everything outside your skin must be Anatma. We have a problem. You are Anatma to me, because you're outside my skin, and I am Anatma to you. So how come I'm Atma to me, but Anatma to you? This is confusing, isn't it? This was going to be so easy. I only needed to know about two things, and now I don't know where your Atma begins and ends, and where my Atma begins and ends. Is there an inter-Atma gap? You know, perhaps I radiate out with my aura, and that sort of goes up against your aura, and then we have a sort of inter-Atma gap, so I can go into your space and say, no, and you back away. Maybe Atma maybe isn't behind the skin at all, right? Maybe it's slightly outside the skin, 5 inches, a foot, a mile. We have no idea. What is the inter-Atma gap? If we're all Atma at this side of the skin and Anatma the other side of the skin, are we all individual Atmas? And is everybody else Anatma to me? This is a real challenge. This is a real challenge. And in order to understand that, there's a number of what are called prakriyas. Now, number of mechanisms by which we can try and analyze this atma anatma problem. Right? And I'm just going to say a few of these very briefly so that you can remember it for the rest of your lives. No, at least until you step out of that door. Because this subject is absolutely clear while you are in here on this orange carpet. And the moment you start to move away, it gets more and more fuzzy. By the time you get to the food hall, it's vaporized completely. All right? That's the beauty about the subject. So one way to think about it is that I live in the world of objects, and therefore anything that I can interact with cannot be me. That's one way of looking at it, right? So this is called Drik-Drishya Viveka. This is the seer and the seen, right? This is me, I'm the seer. This can is the seen, right? They're clearly separate, and therefore I, the seer, am Atma. The seen is Anatma, right? Everything that I can perceive, I can touch, taste, smell, whatever, cannot be me. Everything I own cannot be me. I have a car, I have a bicycle. I clearly am not a bicycle, right? I own the bicycle. Anything I own cannot be me. I'm the owner. And the thing is owned. Does everybody follow that? Everybody follow that they're not a bicycle. This is good news, right? So everything that I have or I own cannot be me because I am the owner. The owner and the owned cannot be the same, all right? And you can use this mechanism. My hand. Do I have a hand or am I the hand? Difficult question. I have a hand. If by some freak accident I lost my hand, would I still exist? Would I have a hand? No. So I possess a hand. Right? I'm the owner of this hand. If I'm the owner of the hand cannot be me. The hand is the bicycle. I cannot be that which I own. Okay? Oh, this is starting to get deep. Okay, so you cannot be the owner of anything that you own. Alright? Because if you consider it, if you lose them, will you still exist? If I lost all my arms and legs, would I still exist? Yes. Alright? If I lost my sense of sight, would I still exist? Yes. So it's not the skin is no longer the boundary. We've started to come inwards. Now you ask the question, where does the Atma stop and the Anatma begin? We've come inside the skin now. Oh my God, have we got to the blood vessels? Are we going to get to the bone? All right? And then we get to this entire body. I have a body. All right? Are you the body? Are you the owner of the body? Anything that you own cannot be you. Right? I have a body. We say this. I have a body. Now, it's very intimate to us. You know, it's like going into a Tesco car park and seeing two identical cars. One with a bust light and one absolutely intact, and they're both your model of car. And you come up to them and your heart's going like this. Am I the one that's with the bus light, or am I the one that's absolutely perfect? And you find your absolutely perfect car. Somebody else's busted light, you don't care because your car has not been busted. All right? We like this body because it's so close. Right? We like this ring because it's so close to us. And the further it goes away from us, the less we care about it. That's why I call it my body. Right? It's mine. When you have mine, it's like saying my coat, my glasses. Right? We forget When somebody with glasses, you're told, all right, describe the objects in this room. Say, oh, there's a table, there's a vase, there's a carpet on the floor, there's a ceiling, lights and things like this. You've missed out one thing. What have you missed out? Your glasses. All right? Because that's also an object. But it's so close and intimate to us, I've assumed it to be me. So I'm describing every object in the room except the object through which I'm actually transacting with the room. Do you see? So I'm not the body. In order to do that, we need to now we're going inside the body, we need to delve inside the body. Sorry about this. But it's not biology. For the purposes of analyzing the body, the Upanishads within the Vedas, remember we talked about Veda, the karma section, the action section. Middle is the upasana, the meditative bit, preparing you for the knowledge, which is the anta of the Vedas, Vedanta. Within Vedanta, there's a series of Upanishads, and Upanishads contain the knowledge element of the Vedas, which are primarily ritual-oriented, but they have this end called the Upanishads that we study. Right? So these Upanishads are saying, split the body into 5 layers for the purposes of analysis. We don't have these layers in real life, right? And these layers, sometimes people think of them, the inner self. We are the if you like, the glowing light bulb, and this light bulb is covered with 5 cloths or sheaths, all right? And every sheath makes you think that it is actually the light bulb. But when you remove the sheath by analyzing it, you realize that no, that was just a sheath and the light bulb is further down, right? That's the way you look at it. So the first layer, right, is, students, Annamaya Kosha. Annamaya Kosha. Kosha means layer. Annamaya. Anna means food. The first layer is this layer, the body. Right? The body is reconstituted food. I know that sounds terrible, but that's what it is. This body is reconstituted food. It's called the Annamaya layer, and it's the most, what they call the gross. The gross is not in the American style, gross. No, gross means the most dense part of us is this physical body, and it's called the Annamaya Kosha. Right? If you're going to analyze the self, this is the one that you see in the mirror, right? And you say, that's me, all right? But if you go without the arm, you go to the mirror, you say, that's me, but I'm harmless. Armless. Okay, right? So that's the first layer, and you realize that you have a body. So I'm not, and the body is owned by me. I'm the owner of the body. Therefore, I cannot be the body. The next level up. For this purpose, we have to go from the physicality, the physical layer, what's called the gross body, to our subtle body. Ooh, didn't know I had a subtle body. Why is it called a subtle body? Because a subtle body is imperceptible to our senses. Right? I cannot see your subtle body. It's imperceptible to me. It's perceptible to you because the second layer up from the Annamaya Kosha is, I'm waiting to be heard from my students who are in the class, Pranamaya Kosha. Prana, all right, these are the life forces. This is the connection from the physical body to the subtle body. The pranas, the 5 pranas. And these are all about circulation and breathing in and out. We normally, if you've done pranamaya, is breathing techniques. So pranamaya kosha is the the 5 biological life forces. And this is the connection between the subtle body that contains the mind and the physical body. That's why when you see a horror movie, all right, your heart goes boom, 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 right? Because you're affecting, the mind is affecting the pranas, and the prana is affecting the body. It's that connection that we do. That's why in meditation, you focus on the breath in order to calm the body, because that's the interface, if you like, between the gross physical body and the subtle body that we all have. The next one in the subtle body is Manomaya Kosha. Good job, the brain is still working a little bit, isn't it? The Manomaya Kosha, because my students aren't going to be much help here. So, Manomaya Kosha. Manomaya Kosha is the thinking element, all right? Or rather, is manas, is the element that it doesn't do the intellectual thought, because that's the next one up. It's the one that acquires the information, all right? When you open your eyes, you can't actually fail to see. So if you open your eyes, the information will come in. You can't say, I'm going to have my eyes open and not see. Or I've heard enough today. I'm just going to close my ears and not hear anymore. You can't do it. The Manomaya Kosha takes all this input and puts it into the mind and says to the next layer, the Vijnanamaya Kosha, the intellectual layer, all right, I've got this stuff for you. What does it mean? Right? And the Vijnanamaya Kosha says, oh yes, I'll just ask memory over here and I'll pull that off. And that's a word. All right? That's a word, and the word means this, and that's in a grammatical structure. He's just put it into a sentence, and it actually means this much. The Vijnanamaya Kosha, the fourth layer, is analyzing that input of the Manomaya Kosha. Right? So the Pranamaya, Manomaya, and the Vijnanamaya Kosha are the three layers of the subtle body. And we had Annamaya Kosha, which was the layer of the physical body. Right? Now we have one more body. Because remember, there can be no effect without a cause. So what is the cause of the subtle body? And it's called the causal body. Not a casual body, which is what you have when you have a chai or a latte. This is a causal body. It's the cause of the subtle body. And in there, we have this state of bliss. Anandamaya Kosha. Right? Anandamaya Kosha is a complete state of bliss. And the best way that I can explain it is in that moment when you aren't using your intellectual, any sort of rational thought, you're not using your body, you're sat down, some music is coming to you, and you're in that completely different place. Or you've just seen your child smile for the first time. Is that moment, that supreme happiness that's independent of everything else, is you're in Anandamaya Kosha. Right? Because we have always, every one of you have had those moments of supreme bliss. Right? And because you've had those moments of supreme bliss, that supreme bliss cannot be you. Why? Anything you possess, anything you experience, cannot be you. You are the possessor. You are the experiencer. The experiencer and the experience cannot be the same. Right? If you get an electric shock, you experience an electric shock. You are the experiencer. The electric shock is the experience. You are not an electric shock. Is it clear? Right? So when you have an experience, you go in meditation, and you say, oh, I'm going into samadhi. Absolute bliss. And samadhi, which is the eighth layer of the eighth layer, the final layer of the 8 limbs of yoga. Right? Many yogis think that samadhi is the very top, is oneness. It is. It is oneness. For that moment until you have to get up and go to the toilet. And then the oneness disappears. Alright? So, Nirvikalpa Samadhi is when you're in that meditative state and you're not even utilizing any will or power to stay in that. Right? And there are people who can train themselves to reach that. But if you're meditating, what you're meditating upon, if you see lights, right? People say, I've gone into an altered state of, a higher state of consciousness. I now see lights, I hear bells ringing. That's an experience. Anything that you experience cannot be you. You are the experiencer. Right? So that's a good definition of Atma. Oh yeah, that's what we were talking about, wasn't it? So that's a good definition of who I am. I'm Atma. Who is Atma? I'm the one who is the experiencer of everything that is experienced. All right? That's a good definition. We can work with that, can't we? I'm the experiencer. Now, there's a slight problem with that. You knew it would be. In order to experience something, you're performing an action. Right? What action are you performing? Oh, this is really easy. It's like English grammar. It's you're experiencing. That's the action you're performing when you're an experiencer, right? This is not hard. As I said, this is not rocket science. If I can do it, you can do it. All right? I am the experiencer. There's an experience. I'm performing the action of experiencing, of witnessing something that is happening. When I perform an action, what happens? I go from a state when I haven't performed the action to a state where I have performed the action. That's the change in experience, right? It's a bit difficult. All right, I'll say it again. All right, so in order to have an experience, I need to have a change of state, right? I need to have a change of state from before the experience to after the experience, to have had the experience, all right? In order to go from before the experience to after the experience, I must be moving from one finite state to another finite state. Right? Now, if I'm in that finite state, how many finite states are there? Right. And Advaita Vedanta says that actually Atma is infinite. That's a bit sad because I thought I was under my skin, and then I went higher and higher up. Ram took us right in the brain and beyond it, and he said, that's Atma, you're the experiencer of these things, and now he says you're not the experiencer because you're infinite. And Vedanta says, you're not the experiencer. You're that by which the experience is known. Very subtle difference. You're not the experiencer of the experience. You're that by which the experience is known. And that awareness by which the experience is known does not participate in the experience. Right? You see, you have to be different from your experience. Otherwise, you wouldn't actually know the difference. Let's put it another way. Traveling along, 70 miles an hour on the motorway. I never do 70 miles an hour on the motorway, but forget that. 70 miles an hour on the motorway, and there's somebody in the next lane, exactly match speed, having a cup of coffee. So they shouldn't be, but they're having a cup of coffee while they're driving along at 70 miles an hour. And I lean over and I say, oh, that person's having a cup of coffee. Wrong. That person is having a cup of coffee traveling at 70 miles an hour. I can't see the 70 miles an hour. Why? Because I'm traveling at 70 miles an hour. In order to see what is actually happening, I must be stationary. And if I was fast enough like that, I can say, oh, there's somebody traveling at 70 miles an hour having a cup of coffee. If you move with the experience, you can't detect the experience. All right? My life is a series of highs and lows. If I was me, the one that is having the highs and lows, I'd be going with the highs and lows. You'd never be able to detect when you were happy or when you were unhappy. You'd never be able to detect it. Because if you were the person experiencing the happiness, if they came together, the happiness and the experiencer of the happiness came together, you'd always say, oh, I'm just staying the same, whether life goes up and down or not. You must be stationary in order to observe the change in state of yourself. The very fact that you know when you're happy and you know when you're unhappy means that you cannot be happiness or unhappiness. You're the one that observes. Right? Not difficult, is it? You are the one that observes. So now you say, happiness, intangible thing, is that me? Is happiness me? No. I am happy. This is what I said. This is why we're confused. But I have happiness. Anything that I have cannot be me. I have unhappiness. Anything that I have cannot be me. I'm not the bicycle. Right? This is something I possess currently. I'm going to give up a little bit. I'm going to go to another class and it'll be much happier, less depressing in another class. And then I'll be able to observe the happiness again. Right? I am that by which my thoughts and actions, my experiences are known. I'm the awareness. What's the analogy? I'm like the torch, the light bulb. Right? Or the sun. The sun shines into two rooms. One really dirty, one really clean. Light by which the contents of the room are known. The light does not care about the condition of the room. Does it? It's unaffected by the room. But it's that by which the room is known. So some of us have clean minds, and some of us have less clean minds. It's like the room. Alright? The awareness, it neither comes here nor there. It's that by which our minds and bodies are known. Consciousness. Right? But consciousness is an awkward word in English. Because it means to be conscious of something. Right? And therefore, we tend to have awareness is probably a better English term. Right? In Sanskrit, we just called it Chaitanya. The awareness or consciousness by which all things are known. That is me. Gosh, 50 minutes and I only just figured out who I was. Atma. Okay? Now, if I'm that aware, it begs all sorts of questions. See, the reason that this seems to be such a difficult subject, because I'm trying to study the one thing that is closest to my heart. Me. All right? I'm really interested in me because the whole of the universe is from my perspective. And once I know me, I can know when to take or where to take the next step. You cannot proceed on your journey to anywhere without knowing where you're starting from. So the first thing to know is, who am I? And this is the most interesting subject. I'm not trying to give you an ology here. There's no biology or geology. No, we aren't doing an ology of another subject. We're doing an ology of Atma, myself. Starting off from this point, once I nail this first blancmange on the ceiling, the second nail will be really easy. All right? I've got to figure out who I am. So I start from who I am. The problem with this is that everything I've ever studied, I've made into an object. Right? I want to study the design of this can. It's an object. I want to write something on this piece of paper. An object. I want to read a book. It's an object. Confusingly, we call biology and sociology different subjects. But they're not. They're objects. I'm the subject. I'm studying them. They're the objects that I'm studying. In fact, all our lives, whenever we've studied anything, we've always objectified what we study. Any scientific study, you make measurements. This is so many volts. This is so many amps. This, you can tell I'm an electrician. So, yeah, and this is the length in meters or whatever. What am I doing? I'm measuring something, I'm recording something, and then I'm trying to repeat the experiment and say, this is scientific truth. I'm objectifying everything. Everything I've learned to date is as an object. Right? Because I'm doing the learning. And suddenly, I change to the subject. I'm trying to find out the one who is objectifying. Right? And the thing is, you cannot objectify the subject. Right? You cannot objectify me and study myself from, oh, let me have a look at myself, see what I look like. You cannot do it. You cannot make myself an object because I'm the one who's studying. And who am I studying? I'm studying me. So for the first time in our lives, we're doing a completely different form of study. We're trying to study something that we don't know how to study. Because we've only ever studied objects. And if I subjectify my object, I objectify my subject rather, all right, then it must be me because they're okay? So there must be a subject that's studying it. This is why it's so very difficult. That's why the Vedas say, I'll give you a mechanism by which you can study. It's not working. You're not working. Okay, all right, let's see. Perhaps we got power dips or something. All right. So, we're trying to study something that is not studyable. All right. We're trying to study something that's, because we've only ever studied things that are finite, and we're being told this is infinite, right? And they think it's really easy. It's not, is it? You're trying to study something that is yourself, that it cannot be studied, it cannot be documented, it cannot be objectified, and it is infinite in nature. How hard can it be? We are the awareness by which things are known. All right? And the final question to therefore ask, where does this awareness stop? Where does my awareness stop and your awareness begins? Right? And the Vedas said, I can go into a complicated 15-hour explanation, but I'll give you the quick route because we're on fast track to liberation. So we can say, the Vedanta says, it is not that I have an awareness, right? It's that the awareness has me as the body. Awareness has you as the body. The awareness that is you is the same awareness that is me. There's only one awareness, one consciousness, one Chaitanya. Right? We are all one. It's all right, the bit that gets cut out are bits that you aren't supposed to hear. That's what Advaita Vedanta says. We are all not two. Advaita means not two. We are not two. It is a single awareness that is individualized in the sense of the body and the mind. All right? Oh gosh, this gets really tricky. How come? Right, Ram, I got a question for you. All right? If you don't ask the questions, I ask myself the questions, and then it reminds me of what the answer should be. All right? If it's the same awareness, how come you can't see what I'm thinking? Ha, I got you, huh? Right? I'm thinking something that's completely different to you. How come you cannot see what I'm thinking if it's all the same umbrella awareness? Right? It's because this single awareness has an individualization within you to create your own temporary, personal awareness. Oh, that's very convenient, isn't it? Imagine this lovely tent, right? There's sunlight outside, well, sort of. There's light outside. And we have diffuse lighting in here so that you can see everybody, everything. We can say that it's lit up with diffused light. Say that somebody was to hold a mirror up against one of those open doors, and the sun was shining, and the sun shone in the mirror, and we got a reflected bright light on one of the walls. All right? Bright light. It will roughly be the shape of the mirror that's reflecting. And I pointed to you and said, what's the light there? You say, that's an easy question. Of course, it's the reflected sunlight from the mirror. Wrong. What's the light on the wall? It's the diffused light that was already there, on top of which is the reflected light from the mirror. Correct? Do we see the diffused light? No. It's obliterated the brightness of the mirror light. This one awareness gets reflected in the reflective medium of our mind to create a reflected awareness within us, localized. And it's this reflected awareness by which we come to know what we think and do individually. One sun, all right? But it's reflected into many. There's as many reflected awareness as there are minds. There are almost as many minds as people. But reflected awareness and into minds, all right? And it's that reflected awareness. Remember, the reflective medium travels with the medium. So this reflected awareness provides a sentiency to this mind and body. And when we walk out of this class, we move that sentiency with us. The reflected awareness moves with us. The sun doesn't move out with you, but you do. And you carry this reflected awareness. That is the personal awareness that you have, by which you know your thoughts and actions. Okay? We can take we've only done half of the story. We've only done one of the 8 billion people on the earth. So we've only done the Atma bit. We haven't even got to Anatma. But are there questions on Atma? Very important subject. Can you take the microphone over, please? Does it seem sort of vaguely clear? The mind is the reflective medium through which awareness is reflected, by which we come to know. Not everything reflects, all right? A piece of wood would not reflect the sunlight, but a polished piece of glass will. The mind, remember, part of the Manomaya Kosha, the mind, the part of the subtle body, has got that property of being able to reflect awareness into a localized copy. And the quality of that reflection is dependent upon the quality of the reflecting medium. The better the mind, the sharper the reflection. That's why some of us have a sharper mind than others. All right? It's the subtle body, it's the quality of the subtle body that determines your state of awareness. Every sentient being from an amoeba to a blade of grass, every sentient being onwards has a subtle body. And it's the quality of their subtle body that affects the quality of that reflection. Right? So a single-celled creature still has a subtle body. It has an awareness, but that awareness is limited by the quality of its subtle body and the facilities available to it. Okay, yes, question.
Just that.
All right, I've just answered your question. Yep, the awareness is in all sentient beings. This is why a lump of rock does not have a subtle body. Anything that has a subtle body is aware. You know, some people say, this lady over there with a question, have you turned the mic on now? A rock does not have a subtle body, and therefore a rock does not have awareness. It exists, but it doesn't think. Yes?
Thanks so much for the talk. I understood.
Hang on a moment while we get your... Love to hear your voice as well.
Can you hear now? Is that
yeah,
okay?
Speak
right.
up.
Okay, one of the things... Great.
Yeah, that's good.
One of the things that you said right at the beginning of your talk was that there are some things that couldn't be changed. There are lots of things that we can do by karma and so on, but some things can't be changed, and you mentioned specifically, so for example, the person that you're going to marry. And I was thinking, but then you can alter that. So for instance, by coming to events like these, it might affect the way in which I perceive the person that I would like to be with. For example, all the things that I might do subsequently as a result, for example, of listening to your talk, that would then affect the kind of person that I would like to be with. So that seems to me to be contrary to what you said, which is that you can't affect that.
Right. So why do you think coming to this is anything but your prarabdha karma? The very fact that you started off in one place and then you got affected by something that allowed you to change your mind and choose somebody else, how do you know that the second choice of person isn't the one that was determined by your prarabdha karma?
What about people who marry more than one person?
Prarabdha karma. We all have desires. You know, some people want to marry other people that want to divorce. I mean, so you have to say that the major parts of your life, major events in your life, have got this predetermination. Why? Because your life needs to be the experiential world through which you can exhaust the prarabdha karma with which you are born. All right? And that may mean different partners. It may mean a change of things. You may think that you're totally in control. But as I said, what we control is a tiny fraction of what actually happens. So that's why when you go to Waitrose or Co-op, wherever you shop, and you look the sales girl straight in the eyes and says, every step I've taken since I was born has led me to this time with you. She'll fall over and give you a free donut. Every step I've taken in my entire life has led me to this moment where I'm with you. All right? It is all affected. Everything is karma. And it goes in sections like that. And there has to be a degree of acceptance. Right? That there's things that I can change, things that I cannot change. Yes, the question.
Is it true that our thoughts aren't ours? They're not us, but we do own them.
So, thoughts, best way to think of thoughts are like bubbles in boiling water. They start off as very small on the bottom of the pan, and they get higher and higher, and the higher they get to the top, they get bigger and bigger bubbles, and when they go to the top, it bursts. All right? We are that by which the thought is known. We are not the thought. And therefore, thoughts come early on, and thoughts are like a minuscule flame. If you can perceive a thought that you'd rather not have, that's the time to blow it out. Because then, as you feed it, oh, that's right, yeah, I thought about that yesterday and the day before. Yeah, and Mum's still not talking to me. And you've just blown up this little flame. into quite a raging thing. Soon you have a forest fire, and the same breath by which you could have blown the flame out now fans the flame of the forest fire. And because you can't put it out, the ego justifies it. Says, yeah, that's meant to be. All right? What you thought you could control, you allowed it to get out of control in a state where it's completely out of control. The best you can do is accept it and say, yeah, well, it's meant to be. And you justify it. That's why all the great thoughts are going on in our head, opinions, we fully justify. Right? No rationale to them at all, maybe. But we fully justify as being truth in our heads. Because we can't do anything about it. When there were tiny, weeny flames, tiny bubbles at the bottom of the pan, we didn't turn off the stove. And as a result, it's now grown into a big bubble and we can't do anything about it at this moment in time. So, thoughts, and you have about 50,000 of them a day, right? And you had 45,000 of them yesterday. And you'll have the same 45,000 tomorrow, all right? They're not worth it. You are the observer. The thought is the observed. Once you can find that level of separation, you can simply say, oh, that's what my mind thinks. That's what my mind thinks. That's not me. And you get to this point where your mind does the thing that it wants to do, and you have a general awareness that you need to be doing the things that need to be done. These are the two things in life. What do I want to do? What needs to be done? And the difference between these two is called pain. All right? What do I want to do? What needs to be done? What is the spiritual training? Is to bring these two gradually together. You come to a point to what you do is what needs to be done. There's no more fight within you. Remember, a desire, we like to all fulfill our desire, don't we? We don't like our desires unfulfilled. There's a name for unfulfilled desire. What is it? Anger. Anger is the other side of desire. Anger is the unfulfilled desire. And greater is the difference between what I thought should have happened through the desire. What actually happened is the amplitude of the anger, the emotion of the anger. Unfulfilled desire is anger. What is fulfilled desire? You're going to say happiness. Wrong. What is fulfilled desire? Greed. Fulfilled desire is greed. Because the moment you fulfill a desire, what's your next desire? I like that. I want it a bit more. Or again. All right? Because then I'll like it even more. Unfulfilled desire is anger. Fulfilled desire is greed. Right? Why are we into this desire process? Because we think the happiness that we seek is in the object we're about to acquire through our action. And I always say to people, lick of pistachio ice cream is fabulous. Instant happiness. All right? A bucket of pistachio ice cream, instant unhappiness. So it's clearly true that happiness is not in the pistachio ice cream, is it? The happiness is not in the objects we're about to acquire as a result of our desire. Where is the happiness? It's our innate nature. Well, if it's in our innate nature, why don't we have it all the time? What is innate anyway? Does anybody know what is intrinsic? What is incidental? We have to have a little story here, don't we? You need to understand what is intrinsic and what is incidental, right? Intrinsic is something, it's a property of the basic component. It cannot be separated from it. So the example they always give, fire, pot on the fire, water in the pot, rice in the pot, cooking. Rice cooks in the fire because of what? Heat. Heat is intrinsic to rice or not? No. It's incidental because you can have cold rice or hot rice. When you have something that's intrinsic, it can never be separated. All right? Where does it get its heat from? The rice borrows its heat from the water. Is heat intrinsic to water or is it incidental? It's incidental because you can have cold water and hot water. Where does the water borrow its heat from? Pot. Not the fire, the pot. Is heat intrinsic to the pot or incidental? Incidental, because you can have a cold pot. Where does the pot borrow its heat from? The fire. Is heat intrinsic to the fire or incidental? Intrinsic. You cannot have a fire without the heat. So it's very important to know what is intrinsic and what is incidental. Our nature of happiness is intrinsic to us. All our states of unhappiness is incidental to us. All right? We blame the outside world for our happiness and our sadness. And what happens is that we allow situations to obscure our current situation so that the happiness that is intrinsic to us is not seen by us. How do you know, Ram? Because you go through it every day. Correct? When you're deeply asleep, are you unhappy? No. Why aren't you unhappy when you're deeply asleep? Because you have no thoughts. Your mind is quietened down. All right? In fact, you have no way of perceiving what you have. But one thing, this is why people who are in desperate trouble, they seek sleep. Because that is their only way out, temporary reprieve from their current situation, is to be able to sleep. And their troubles for that limited period will go away. Right? Unhappiness is not intrinsic to us, it's incidental to us. You need to understand that in order to understand who you are. God, this little simple subject tended to be much bigger than I thought. I was just thought little old me, the one in the mirror that's getting older and older all the time, grey and the hair and then falling out. I thought that was me. No, it is the awareness by which that is seen is you. All right? How do I know? When you looked at yourself when you were 5 years old in the mirror, and you look at yourself now in the mirror, that awareness by which you come to know, has it aged? Does it have a gender? No. It's the same. It has not changed with your body. You have a body of which you are aware. Right? That awareness is completely separate to the body. Is in and through the body, but it's a completely separate entity. It's like a light bulb with electricity. Right? Can you see the electricity? No. When the electricity is on, what happens? This body, animated, we get light. Right? When the bulb fuses, is the electricity still there? Put your finger there and find out. Of course it's still there, but the light is not there. Why? Because the light has fused. So when the body and mind, when the body goes, then that particular light goes out, right, of that body. There was a question back there.
Yes, thank you. Asking on behalf of a friend, how best to manage ego?
How best to manage ego. Wonderful. What you need is an enlightened ego. All right? That's the only way to manage it. The ego is absolutely necessary because it's necessary for our survival. Therefore, right from an early age, we've considered that every bush must have a tiger behind it. Right? Because you just live longer that way. If you assume that every bush has a tiger behind it and you're prepared, then you just live longer. And we want to live longer. Everybody wants to live longer. So the ego has gradually built up this Vijnana kosha that I talked about, the intellectual aspect of it, the thinking, the rational thinking aspect of it, is aspects of the ego. And the ego within us, in the subtle body, thinks that it is top of the tree. It's the chief honcho. Up till now, it's taken all the decisions, and therefore it must be the top of the structure. And it gets a real knock when told that you are just a mechanism that's operating. And I am really, my inner essence is the awareness by which I see you operating. Right? I'm aware of your operation. And the ego takes a knock. And it's only through the teaching, slight by slight, for instance, the thing that our actions that are driven by our ego, desires are driven by ego. All right? And to know that our desires are not going to fulfill things that are going to make me permanently happy. And at that point, the ego has received its first level of training. It's like pulling the dog back with a jerk when it goes too far forward. It's just received its first little training that what you know and what you can do does not solve my problem. And you've got to rein it back slowly. I need you. What a lovely ego. I've got a lovely golden chair. Go and sit on that for a little while I think about something else. All right? And you and I can join forces later and go walking. So you need to gradually, through the training, the ego it needs to be there, otherwise we won't function. But it has to be brought under control by understanding that it is not the be-all and end-all. It is not the final, the highest state of us. In fact, people call it the little I. Oh, ego doesn't like that. The ego is the little I rather than the big I. And the thing is that we've obeyed it all our lives. Right? And therefore, something that is such a deep habit takes almost as long to get rid of. It's very difficult. It's very difficult indeed. That's why you've got to be able to, it's a very simple mantra. Remember I said it yesterday? You've got to change from what? So what? All right? Ego is driven by opinion. I know more than you. And therefore what I know is correct, and what you know, what you're doing, what you're saying is incorrect. It's opinion. Drop your opinion. There's no point in it. Absolutely no point in it. And you can say, oh, Ram, if I didn't have an opinion, the world could go and blow itself up and millions of people will be killed. Millions of bodies will die. But the awareness will still be around. And that awareness will come into another body. The Upanishads talk about us as being pots, clay pots, because that's all they had. Clay pots, that's the physical body. Water, the subtle body. All right? Small pots, large pots, thick pots, cracked pots. We're all pots of water. All right? And the water is the subtle body. One sun reflecting from the top. When you look into the pot, what do you see? A reflection of the total sun. In every pot, the reflected consciousness that's within that body. All right? What's the quality of that reflection? Depends on the quality of the reflective medium, the water. It's got lots of ripples on it. The sun's going like this. Nice and still, clear, great reflection. All right? Sooner or later, every pot leaks. Right? Physical pot leaks. The subtle body, the water, leaves it. And is collected into another pot. Another body that's created. And so we have another individual. Because subtle body is imperceptible, is not physical. Doctors can't find it, but you can find it because you know that you can think. Doctors don't know that you can think because they've never found out. All right? The subtle body is imperceptible to any instrument except for you, your knowing. So the subtle body does not die. The physical body dies. But the subtle body is the transmigrating soul that reincarnates in the next body. It finds another pot to hold the water. How does it find the quality of the pot? You are the potter. You designed it by the karma through which you were born. Oh, that's deep, Ram. I think one more question. Yeah, from here. You got all sorts of questions about. Most people have questions about what's going to happen after I die. They're actually not concerned with what's going to happen when I'm alive. Most of the questions I get is what's going to happen when I die. Why do you care? Right? Why do you care? Most people are, what's going to happen when I go? Right? Don't worry about it. Right? Your mind is not going to be making those thoughts when you're dead. It's for other people to worry about what happens when you die. Yes, question.
When I'm born,
yes,
or when anybody's born,
yes,
does any of their subtle body come from the body that they came from?
What happens is that the subtle body, it migrates to another physical body. Now, what the subtle body remembers, that's probably what the deep down question is. What the subtle body remembers and is able to do is dependent upon the facilities of the body that it migrates to. Right? If you migrate from your current state into an oak tree, right, which is another sentient being, it's not going to be very good at art. All right. Okay. I assume everybody's an artist, but it's not going to be very good because it doesn't have those facilities. All right. This is why the effects of the subtle body are often seen in very small children who talk about a past life. Some of them talk in languages that have been extinct for some time. All right. And so, but by the conditioning of society, by the time they're 2.5, this is told as mere imagination of a child. And therefore it's eradicated from them and it just dwindles and disappears. But we bring it on. And this is when I talked about, this is so connected. This is why I talked about Brian Weiss. When he took people in an altered state into a past life, what was he doing? He was taking people in a part of the subtle body that they possess that isn't immediately apparent in their current life. Thank God we don't remember, right? It's bad enough trying to remember whether I paid for this tent or not, all right? Let alone trying to figure out what happened in the past life. I don't remember anything before the age of about 4. I would have great difficulty in thinking about past life and many lives thereafter. But it's all in there because past life therapy is all about, in an altered state of mind, going to that position and bringing out. And why do people do it? Because some of the conditions that we exhibit today is as a result of what we have inherited as a result of actions in past lives. And the knowledge of that past life often eradicates that problem today. So if you have a phobia about something, closed spaces, being stabbed or something if you have a phobia, almost certainly it's as a result of an action, a traumatic action in a past life. And therefore one of the treatments for that is to go and visit those traumatic sections, because we always remember the traumatic bits, right? If I told you that I know of a beautiful city, it's really, really clean, right? The buildings are really fantastic, and the rent is really cheap, and the water and electricity is practically, they give it away. The lights come on at night, and a gentle river flows through the thing. The only thing is that the main street has got a big pothole, right? If I ask you about this city in 5 minutes' time, what will you tell me about the pothole, right? We remember our traumas very, very easily. We forget the rest of it, and that's what past life therapy looks at, those traumatic moments. And the knowledge of that trauma allows you to overcome a situation that you have now. And in the same way, knowledge of who you are allows you to overcome the inconclusive thinking that you currently have about your current life. Vedanta is very strong. It says it is not one of the mechanisms for the elimination of sorrow. Vedanta never claims that. It doesn't say you can do other things. You can do karma yoga, you can do bhakti yoga, you can do meditation, and you eliminate sorrow. Vedanta says, can we reduce the sound of it? It's booming, please. Or switch off that. Yeah, thank you. So, Vedanta says, it doesn't say, I'm one of the mechanisms for elimination of sorrow. Vedanta says, it's the only mechanism for the elimination of sorrow. Very bold statement. There is no other way to eliminate sorrow except through self-knowledge, self-realization, to find out who you are. That's why it's important. That's why you're born as a human being. That's why life is so very precious. Because you finally figure out that you're not the human being that you were born as. That's the only reason we're born, is to find out that we're not this mind and body. Because there's no other way of finding out. One more question, and it'll be 11, and I would have done my second, and my notes this morning would have been fantastic. Look, I referred to them all the time, didn't I? Yes, last question from this lady over here.
The way I'm understanding it is that then keeps your subtle body as separate. Because
I knew I shouldn't have brought up the subtle body. It just generates so many questions. What's going to happen to it when I die? Who's going to look after it? I'm looking after it right now. What's going to happen when I die? So carry on, sorry.
Well, don't we bring back everybody, if everybody's past life experiences, not just our own?
You bring back all the past life experiences that your subtle body has gone through.
So our subtle body stays separate.
It is separate from the physical body, yeah. It resides with the physical body. In fact, the only reason that the physical body is alive is because of the subtle body. The subtle body is the reflective medium. It's that reflection that powers the mind and the body. Once the body dies, the definition of a dead body is that it no longer has a subtle body. The subtle body has left. So the reflective medium has left. So that awareness, that consciousness is no longer there. And this food bit goes back to the earth, goes back to food.
It doesn't just, the subtle body doesn't just join to a great mass of subtle bodies.
No, that's a wonderful idea, that we all join the oneness of the ocean. And the thing is, in order to join the oneness of the ocean, you've got to be separate from the ocean. And Advaita Vedanta says we're all one. This is a real problem, and we're going to take at least another hour and a half to figure out that particular question. Thank you very much indeed. Can we just... Lovely to see you. We'll just close with a final prayer. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnashya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishtate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day.